Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, again, thank you all for coming. I really, really appreciate it. We wanted to have this as a town hall, sort of a discussion with you, um, really because we've been experiencing an uptick in the number of requests that we have. And we've noticed that despite doing our best to try to get additional drivers, which we have, um, we're spending a ton, not we, Dan in
Dan.
particular, and Claire and I on relief duty, um, we're spending a fair amount of time calling and texting and emailing and trying to figure out who we can get to drive people, to various places, sometimes at the last minute. And so we just have a conversation with you about that, and we want to really show you some data around how many drives we're doing and how often people are doing them, and then hear from you if what's working and what perhaps isn't, and what we might, if we can think creatively about what we might do differently, then I think that we can try to improve our program, which is the real goal. And then I want to point out at the very end, I'd like to walk away with an understanding, a collective understanding, if possible, about what's a reasonable expectation for us to have in terms of the number of rides, maybe per month or per quarter that we might put out as an expectation for a driver when they sign up, in terms of being an active driver. So is that, one a month, or, three a month, or, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. First, though, I think you all know, everybody knows the staff, but we want to make sure. So I'm Frank Finnemore, the executive director, and then Dan and Claire, if you want to
I'm
go ahead.
Claire Thompson, the assistant director.
And I'm Dan, the member and volunteer coordinator.
Great, thank you. So Claire used to be the one calling everybody, and now Dan has been doing it now for a year and a half. And like I said, we all sort of back up Dan, so it's important that we're all here. What we thought we'd do first is give you a little bit of information, a little bit of data that we're seeing. And so I've asked Claire, who's taken on the role of our statistician in the office, to go over a little bit of that background and the data for you. And she's going to share her screen and give that to you.
All right, can everybody see the
Yes.
PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so here is a kind of visual representation of just the number of ride requests picked up by volunteer drivers within the past year or so. And the numbers at the bottom are kind of arbitrary. It's just, so in the past year, we've had, I think 41 out of around 51 drivers did at least one ride, which is really great. And each bar is essentially a driver. So on the left here, we have about 8 people who did one drive over the course of the year, a few who did 2. And then up at the higher end, we have a couple of people who picked up over 60 rides. Some who did around 30. And so it's just interesting to kind of see the kind of, I guess, range of activity between, once a year and then seemingly all the time. So
if you just pause on that just for a second, Claire, if you can imagine that somebody who is giving 45 or more rides a year, 45 or 62 or 68 rides, if they happen to go on vacation, what happened that particular week or month or what have you. And so obviously we want to we're so thankful. I mean, I really should have started with that. You all are doing such an amazing amount of work, and we're so incredibly thankful for whatever you can give. But obviously we want to make sure that, we both expand the number from 41 to whatever number we possibly can. As Claire said, we have 51 people on the books. But so 10 people haven't been active yet this year. Some of them are brand new, so that's why haven't done any. And some have moved on. We know they've moved on to other things, but they haven't actually told us that they've done that. But we want to sort of even this out a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's easier to see when you see the data displayed like this.
Sure.
Any
Yeah.
questions on that before Claire's got some other great takeaways, but any questions so far?
Not I.
Okay.
Just a quick question. There's quite a bit of an echo on my phone. Is that a problem with my machine or yours?
I think
No,
it's on
you're
yours, Eric.
definitely echoing.
Okay.
Eric is echoing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm echoing too. Let me try to go out and come back
Probably
on.
because you're on two screens.
Oh.
Yeah, it looks like there's two of you here, Eric.
That's
Got
why.
it. Okay, give me a
That's just
second.
feedback.
Still one of them.
No,
I can remove one of you, but I'd have to know which one to do. One has a camera.
Okay, I think this might work
There you
better.
go.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
okay.
it.
Sorry about that.
Is that better? Yeah.
No problem. Okay.
Frank, can I just ask you, or maybe, not sure who would know this, but we provide rides every day of the week, right?
Yes.
And do they clump anywhere? Like, are there more days? I guess I'm really curious because I'm not here a lot of weekends. And so I'm kind of curious how much demand is there on the weekends for ride? It seems to me there'd be fewer doctor's appointments, which is mostly what I seem to be doing. So I'm just
Yeah.
wondering how that clumps.
I'll answer and then Dan can correct me if I'm wrong. But the weekend rides are much fewer, and it's mainly to the grocery store or to do a hair salon. One person for whom we do that regularly. There might be an occasional other thing. Taking someone to the vet, for example, is one that I can think of, but they're really mostly during the week and
Until you
mostly.
started Sunday night suppers.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, there's village activities, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I kind of
you had-
figured that, but I'm kind of relieved to hear it also because
Yeah.
That's not where I'm very helpful.
Right. And we also don't get many at night during the week. And when we do, if somebody is, and we want people to go out and do social things, but it's often hard when someone says, oh, I'm going to go to the Kennedy Center and I need to get a ride home. And it's like, how are we going to do that? Okay, some other data, Claire?
Sorry, I just couldn't figure out I lost my screen and couldn't unmute. So I'm just gonna go back here. Okay, so this is just kind of some takeaways from the graph from the previous slide. So we had 41 out of 51 drivers who signed up for a total of 568 transportation requests. And some of those are round trip rides. So it's not broken down into individual rides. So it doesn't quite account for the kind of larger number of individual rides there. So out of the 41, we had 24 provide around between 1 and 9 rides over the course of the year, 8 of which provided 1. We had 7 people provide between 10 and 20 rides. 7 people between 20 to 40. 1 driver provided 45 rides, and then we have the 2 drivers who provided 60 plus rides each. And I think we're gonna take away the PowerPoint just so we can all see, everybody can see each other while we're chatting, but these are just some kind of thoughts for our discussion. I think the staff will share our ideas about kind of potential ways that we could kind of improve the process, kind of share the wealth between drivers more. And then we really want to hear from you guys just on what you think about just how the driving program is going, what works for you, what's fun about it, what doesn't work very well, what could make it not very enjoyable and kind of make you not want to sign up for rides, and just kind of generally what things could we potentially implement to make things go more smoothly.
And I'll say that just to provide a little bit of a general context, that rides remain our number one request among Members Plus. And also that we are trying to engage in some transportation training so that people know how to get Senior Med Express and what Metro Access can do, so that we're not their only option. And we're going to continue to do those things. But in some cases, even those city services won't really work for them, as you all know exactly why, because you got to drop them in, you got to walk them into the particular office to make sure that they get to the right place and whatnot. So what we're trying to, we are trying to reduce the burden on our drivers for those people that can be serviced in other ways. We can help them do that, but it's slow and it's not the preferred way, because if we face it, getting someone to pick you up and to drive you exactly where you want to go, exactly when you want to go, is always the preferred means. But we are trying to sort of get folks to look at other options. That said, we're really curious, as Claire mentioned, to find out how it's going for you. So at this point, I want to open it up and just sort of see, what's the good, the bad, the ugly. And we can sort of determine then some things that we might do to address some of the challenges. Robbie.
Actually, I had two really different kinds of comments. One comment was, how much trouble is it to sign up a driver? So how much does it cost you to sign up a person who then only drives once? Or I'm thinking about your earlier point about maybe suggesting, a certain number of drives that a person might do or whatever. And I'm just wondering, do you feel like it's worth it to sign up a person that might only drive once? Or
I don't personally. I mean, it's not a huge expense. It's on average, I would say $75. It's the base price is $50, but if they've lived in certain states, and I can't remember those states, maybe New York or Florida or something, then you pay a little premium. And so when you average it out, it gets to be around $60 or $70 per person. And many people cover the fee, so then we really are not out anything at all. But I do think that it would be beneficial to just be able to say, even in the information sessions, that, if you're signing up as a driver, we really appreciate it, but we would like you to make X number of drives per month. Even if you look at the people that did 60 drives in the last 12 months, that's 5 a month. Which is great. But if you can imagine, if everybody did 2 a month, that graph would look very different.
okay. And I guess my other comment was just about my issues personally. For example, I realize you don't request many drives at night, but I just avoid driving at night at this point. As much as I can. And if I hadn't been avoiding it already, my doctor's advice would have made me avoid it even more.
Right.
So that's one thing. And I don't know at the moment if we have any way of, when Dan is reaching out to us, I don't know if we have a way to, for Dan to screen people out who really don't want to drive at night. I'm not saying I couldn't in an emergency, but it's really, I choose not to. So, and the other thing I was going to say, one thing that's kind of changed over time is, I think in the early years, there were many more cases where the trip to a doctor was split into 2 trips. So now it seems, if you sign up to take someone to the doctor, you go with them and kill time or go in with them. I understand some people need someone to accompany them, but so that there's no option now to sign up to one way of the trip and not do the back end of the trip. So what that means is quite often, I mean, that will kill your entire afternoon.
Yeah.
To do one of those trips.
I think
So
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I agree with Robbie. I have, when people have short doctor appointments, I don't mind waiting, but if it's gonna be like 3 hours, Dan knows I don't grocery shop, so that's good. I'm trying to do more, but I have other stuff going on, and sometimes it's just at the very moment I can't do anything that day. And I'm not thrilled about going to a downtown doctor appointment where I may have to go into a parking garage and spend all day. So, yeah, and I'd love to do a couple a month, and I know I haven't met that, but what I like about it is chatting with people. I mean, it's just always nice to meet people, and there's some people I have given a number of rides to, and that's always nice. And so for me, it's the long trips, and I don't mind some night driving. It depends on how far it would be. I mean, I go to the Kennedy Center all the time, so if it was picking somebody up at the Kennedy Center, that's not such a big deal for me. So anyway, that's my take. Yeah.
Great. Marnie?
Well, what I have to say is pretty consistent with both of those. I'm wary of signing up now. I think usually there's been a choice between a one-way or a round trip. And I've just gotten a little more wary of the round trips because they're so hard to predict. A lot of times people say it'll be a quick appointment, and then for one reason or not, it's just not, because who can really predict what a doctor's office is going to be doing? So that, I think, is a little bit of an issue. I think Dan is the one I deal with most, I guess, on rides. And I think Dan is doing an incredible job at reaching out and fixing things when things fall apart with one person, or let you know in advance if somebody's ride has canceled. I think it's just been great. And I actually like the one-way rides to doctors. I like the chatting and everything, as you said. It's just, I think if you can mostly offer the option of a one-way, 2 one-ways rather than a round trip, I think that's great.
Well,
Great.
can you see
Terry?
me? Well,
Yep.
I usually just set aside the afternoon and the morning, and I'm able to do that if that's the case. So I have no problems with that. The one thing, I think I mentioned it today in one of the last ones, is that I often don't know if they need me to go in, and that, which is fine, but not, I'm always worried about finding the parking and then getting the person off and then has to walk to get there, or you have to leave them on the sidewalk and then you park and they're by themselves for a while. So I don't know if you typically ask them if they need to be attended inside, which, as I said, I don't mind doing, but knowing in advance would be helpful in planning both my time, because I often just double park somewhere and read the paper, not have to have any parking problems or parking delay issues. And I actually prefer the round trip myself, because I think it's satisfying for the person to be able to talk about not always, but often they like to talk, and they share their anxieties about the doctor or their good news about the doctor or whatever. So personally, I don't mind that. So I could be on the round trip roster if there would be such a thing.
What I think we've been tossing around in terms of this, because some people who couldn't be here sent us in some information, is that where possible, where we know that the person won't be confused by 2 different drivers, then and especially when it's downtown, we're going to try to make those individual trips.
yeah.
That if you know that the person cannot, or if we have any question, if that would be confusing to the person,
Mhm.
then we're going to make it a round trip. The other thing is that it seems, and I'd love to get feedback on this, it seems like physical therapy is pretty routine in terms of being 20 or 25 minutes, and you can sort of count on that. And they seem to start on time and end on time, where, you know, all other clinicians sort of up for grabs. As I think Marnie said, you don't know how long it's going to be. So it seems like the PT appointments could stay as round trip, so that then we can just have, it's easier to find one person than to find two volunteers. So we were thinking about keeping those when possible to just a round trip service. Does that make sense to you all?
That's been my experience with the PT.
And
when
some
Mhm,
places,
yeah.
Run in a regular
Yeah.
way, so you can, you know what's gonna be needed.
and some places it's easy to park. Sibley is easy, Vauxhall Road is easy, but if it's like K Street where I'm going,
Yeah.
parking is not easy. You're gonna have to go into a garage even for a 30-minute appointment. So, I think the location has although there's a garage right there, it's just a little more trouble to park in those downtown garages than the ones that are not downtown.
Yeah, sure.
I wonder if we could make an arrangement with St. Paul's K Street at 2430 K, because they have for what now is an almost entirely unused parking lot behind the building.
Oh.
And I use it because I have an association with that parish. But you know, that's been a good place for me to park if I'm going to 21st and K, leaving somebody off at 21st and K. Getting back there because of the one-way streets is a little bit complicated, but it's still better than going into a garage, coming out, or trying to look for, you know, on-site parking on K Street. Might be.
I could certainly do that because Foggy Bottom West End Village is housed there. And they have parking spots. So I could I can reach out and see if they would be willing to do something like that. I've also been curious. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I actually have sometimes asked people, well, it's mainly the physical therapy, I guess. Do they mind if I go home and then come back and pick them up?
Mhm.
And I guess I might even be willing to do that going downtown sometimes if I knew in advance, but I'm a little reluctant to get involved with that. I don't know if that's a wrong thing to ask someone, do you mind if I don't wait with you? Or if Dan, that's something you could highlight, that the person wants someone to stay.
Yeah.
You know, I realize for some people it makes an extra bit of anxiety because then they've got to meet you at the curb somewhere, but I don't know.
Yeah, I have found it very helpful. Sometimes Dan's got a note saying, you know, member needs assistance, or
Right.
you'll need to stay with the member, whatever. I think that's very helpful to know, because it's a little awkward to say, is it okay if I dump you and come back for you?
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't mind that. They're perfectly capable of going in for the appointment. They just can't get themselves there and back. So it's a factor that's helpful to know, I think.
Yeah. Dan, I think that's feasible, right? You could be asking the folks that and routinely putting that in.
Yeah, especially now that I'm getting to know so many of them and their personalities.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. There's that too.
It does make a difference.
and no, I can definitely, and also Steve Wattenmaker, he's a volunteer, he's not here. He was asking if we should, for people that really need a lot of help, if there should be another volunteer to help where he could drop them off and then go park.
Oh, that would be a good
But-
idea. Yeah.
But
If you can do it, if you
that
can
might be
staff
very
that.
hard to coordinate though, but we can.
I
We can
have
try.
a couple of questions, Frank, if you.
Sure.
Has any thought been given, probably you have, to asking volunteers to commit to an entire day and not to a specific ride, but just to say anything that comes up on a certain day? Has any thought been given to that as an option?
I'm
To as
sorry.
many as 3 or 4 a day?
Pardon?
Oh,
they be available for all the rides that
Well,
were
I mean-
requested for a day?
Well,
3 or
I don't
4,
know.
maybe?
I don't know. It's something I might be able, I feel maybe I could devote a day or two a month, entire day to, and whatever comes up, I'll be available. The other question I had was, I noticed there's a lot of grocery shopping rides. And I wonder if, like, I don't think I'd be that interested in actually shopping for somebody. But if somebody ordered food from Giant or Safeway and there was a pickup, I think probably I wouldn't mind going and picking it up and bringing it and delivering it. But I wonder why other people are so interested in having somebody shop for them as opposed to having the stores do the shopping and delivering. I see that all the time at the Giant,
Mhm.
Well, I don't think the
Yeah.
people are capable of doing the shopping themselves.
Pardon?
Yeah, I think they like to see what what they can pick out. They may not be totally
No, but
independent.
I thought some of them were just asking the person to actually go do the shopping, not accompanying them on the shopping.
Oh.
Yeah,
Did I
there's-
misread some of those requests?
I know of one such person that does that a lot.
It's one of the things that I do, and I don't mind doing it. Sometimes, and one of the things there's one time somebody asked me to go, when I called her and said, I'm happy to go shopping for you, do you want to go with me? And she was thrilled. Because she said, I haven't been in a grocery store forever. So it became an outing and that was great. But, I go do this grocery shopping for people who have and I think they have specific needs. Sometimes it's pretty frustrating, but I try to be sympathetic with their special needs.
Right.
And I can see why they don't want to just call the place. Because I watch those people shopping and, all right, I want a head of lettuce. And even if you're pretty precise about, I don't want iceberg, I want romaine or something, when I go to the grocery store, I spend a little bit of time making sure that I'm getting a decent head of lettuce so I kind of sympathize with people who want to take advantage, and sometimes I feel it is taking advantage, but on the other hand, it's different when you can come up with a specific list and tell people exactly what you want. And a couple of them will say, if you can't find exactly that, give me a call so we can do something different. And you have to have a lot of patience to do that. But I kind of try to be sympathetic about why they ask for that. But I also, there are a couple of people that I shop with that it's a major social activity for them. We go together to the grocery store. I always say when I pick her up, I'm calling the Giant to say those 2 crazy ladies are coming in today. But she loves it. And I think it's a social highlight for her for the week.
Yeah.
As to the pickup, I know some people who have asked for shopping, their technology is a flip phone. So they're not going to be able to order in advance.
Exactly. That's true
And
too.
that's one of the things that makes it that you got to get the paper list from them.
I can think of at least 2 members who recently have told me that they do take advantage. I've never shopped for them, that they never ask for shopping, and it's because they do use, Peapod or whatever. That we're not aware of those people because they take care of that for themselves. So we have a kind of a self-selected group here.
Yeah.
We could have a whole town hall on shopping.
Yes.
I don't.
But I do want to bring it back to the driving. We may have a separate one on shopping. But one thing I wanted to mention, I think it was Vincent, if there are specific things that work for you, let Dan know. So like we have a driver who's never available on Tuesday, and we know that because he volunteers at the airport. If we know that you've set aside a couple of days, we can put that in your profile and Dan will know that. We now know that Terry likes round trips. So, and things like that. And even if you're going on vacation, if you let us know or you log into your volunteer profile and you can put a vacation mode on, we really do try to work with you so that we are only asking you for things that we think might work. Eric. You're on mute, Eric.
Oh, he's still
You're
can't
still
hear.
on mute.
Where is Eric?
Yeah, here I am.
There.
Sorry about that. Zoom is pushing me into a new app of Zoom, so I'm having a little bit of trouble with it. I'm sorry. So several things. One is, I mean, I think, Dan, you do a great job with really the whole thing. You know, there was one instance where I got sick and had to cancel. You were on top of it. I find the listings very clear. With regard, I think people have mentioned parking downtown. For me, that's been a constraint inhibiting me from volunteering for some of those. I understand the idea that someone raised about, well, maybe you could have two people go on that, where one could help them get into the doctor's appointment and the other could double park somewhere or deal with the car. Of course, the problem there is you're short on volunteers. And so getting two rather than one, you know, adds to the number of people you need. But just in terms of my own experience, it is the case that sometimes I've been free, but I haven't gone to the K Street because I had to figure out what am I going to do with the car. You know, one of the constraints also that I have is, you know, between work and other travel, I'm just not around very much. And so if I've done 8 or 10 in the last 6 months, that's basically because that's when I've been around. Just a couple of things on the grocery shopping. One of the things I've seen in several of the postings was that the member will work out a way, a system for paying or reimbursing for the groceries. And I'm just imagining one or another of the finance apps that I don't want to deal with. It would be helpful for me if it specified, we'll write a check or we'll give cash, and not, I mean, there's been a couple of times I haven't volunteered because I don't want to deal with however it is they're going to figure out how to pay. The last thing I would say is that normally it's gone fine, but there have been a couple of instances where I gave rides and I worried about just how safe it was for me to get people in and out of the car. It's only happened a couple of times, but there are cases where the mobility challenges are such that I really worry about someone falling. And I don't know that there's really anything we can do about that. But again, it's struck me a couple of times that I didn't feel that I'm really qualified to be figuring out how to help this person get in or out of the car. And so there's that. I don't know whether others have come across that concern.
So Eric, thank you for raising that. I just want to emphasize that you all are the eyes and ears of us, of the village, and that people's abilities change over time. And sometimes we have not laid eyes on them in a year or more. And so please let us know about those mobility challenges, or if you have concerns about getting in and out of your car. Because that's really important for us to know and to try to deal with, including getting additional help in order to make that feasible. One thing I wanted to ask the group is if a handicap placard would be of assistance, because you know, like I have one for my mother. I think there are a few others. It's a little bit of a hassle because we'd have to figure out how to get it, but you know, we can make that available if that helps.
I think that would help.
Definitely.
Would be great. I mean, would you, get the handicap sticker for the placard for the member, who the member would then?
Yeah, that's the ideal, is to do that. And it's not hard at all. It's just a signature required by their primary care physician. But in a pinch, we can also sort of use the ones that, you know, like I have, before, you know, somebody has that in place technically, I guess that's against the rules.
Think so.
But and it's being recorded here, but I think we're all friends. But you know, I think that's a great idea, is to work with the members, and we can have another volunteer go and fill out the form and figure out how to fax it or drop it off to the scan it and drop it off to the primary care physician, so that we can help them do that. That's a great service that we can do.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I was thinking though, Frank, I know it's technically, I think, not within the rules, but really what we need is just a temporary parking pass. And it's not for somebody who always needs a handicap spot. It's really for the situations we've been talking about, where you don't feel comfortable leaving them alone for very long, or leaving them too far from where they have to get to. So a handicap spot would just really be handy.
Mhm.
Even though it's not at that moment for someone who's so disabled that they need that sticker. You need it because it's the logistical challenge. Is there any way to talk to someone about, you know, so that you would have, the village would have, say, a half a dozen parking, you know,
Yeah.
whatever those things that you hang in your car, and you would use it only for the purposes of the village.
Yeah.
If that exists.
It's based on a person. It
Yeah.
has to be tied to a person. So that's why I have one for my mother, which I'm happy, and I don't put her in the car anymore. So I'm happy to loan that out to folks until we can solve this. But I do have quarterly meetings with council member Matt Fruman.
Oh,
And so
good.
I'm going to raise this issue and see if there's something that we can do. Because certainly like Metro Access and cabs, you know, that are run by the city, that they probably pull into spots like that, and they must have something or some ability, maybe just signage, that they don't get tickets. But I don't want anyone to get a ticket.
Yeah, you know, Frank, I'm right down the street from Hearst School, and they have, a lot of the teachers just have a sort of, not handwritten exactly, but just some made up thing that they put in the car so that they don't get ticketed because they exceed the 2-hour limit. So I think there must
Right.
be some provision for, you know, special cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter's a teacher, and I know that the schools do have limited numbers of them specifically for teachers. So I'm sure that's the situation. The last ride I gave, and I'm trying to remember the name of the woman, she lives in Cedric Gardens. She had a handicap placard that she said, "Here, use this while you wait for me." And that was really helpful.
Yeah.
So, and she said, I said, "Oh gosh, everybody should get these." And she goes, "Oh, it's so easy. You just ask your doctor, you just fill out a form," and it was nothing. So I don't think it's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
Great
Yeah.
idea.
Good.
And we can do that when we interview Members Plus. That's something else we can do, is ask them if they have that, and if they think that they would benefit from it. So great ideas. Robbie?
Yep.
I was just gonna say, I was thinking that if John is able to arrange the parking, as far as, I think downtown is the big issue.
Yeah.
If he were able to arrange the parking there, that would really satisfy most of the need. I mean, my only true horror story was quite a while ago. It was when I had to drop someone off at GW Hospital,
Yes.
and there was no parking, and the person needed me to accompany them, and the valet parkers would take no one. So, I mean, there I was in this circumstance where I really had nowhere to park that would have helped the person. But I think that was such an unusual occurrence, and probably it's just, you have to be careful booking these trips to hospitals downtown, because, or that hospital. But honestly, I think having the church parking lot would probably make matters fairly easy.
Yeah.
Then you can read your paper or whatever.
Provided you can find it.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a circuitous word.
It's hidden away a little bit.
Yeah. I'm wondering, we have just 5 more minutes, and I'm wondering if we could hear from any of you who haven't said anything yet, to share any challenges or experiences that you'd like to let us know about.
Well, I haven't said anything yet, but I haven't had a problem, frankly, with the way the requests come across, you know, they have the accurate address. I do enough drives that I really know almost all of the people who I'm driving, and I know what their limitations are. And in many cases, I do go right to the doctor's office with them because they really aren't capable of getting there. And then in some cases, I've even gone into the doctor's office with them, recorded the appointment or taken notes and typed them up afterwards because they won't remember the information.
Yeah.
So, and I'm with Jody and Robbie about driving down on K Street and GW because the parking is such an issue. GW, I can often find something on the street if I have to, and just sit in the car if it's somebody I can drop off and let go in by themselves. But on K Street, that's another issue, and the parking garages are large, and sometimes it's hard to find your car.
Yeah.
And have valet parking. So
One of the things I worry about when people sit in their cars is I worry that you're going to get carjacked. Frankly, I covered crime in the district for years, and I just worry about people when they sit in their cars, especially if it's not a populated area, that it's better not to be in your car.
Jane, can I take a lot of people to Georgetown Doctors thing down on I Street, and I've been amazed sometimes. Just I double park right there in the entrance. I asked the guard, I said, can I take her up to the doctor's office? And I have never been turned down. Now, I usually don't ask because if I've seen there's some parking places around and I don't otherwise need, but that is something that I know at that place often you can leave your car, take them to the office, then come back and then go park the car. And then they call you and you drive up. So at any rate, I just would share that.
Great.
Can I raise something?
Yeah.
Something really, Dan, I don't know how often this happens, but like Sunday when I was scheduled to drive somebody just over to Sunday supper. So it wasn't, I don't mean just Sunday supper, but it wasn't like an emergency doctor's appointment. But I had my own medical crisis about 15 minutes before I was supposed to pick her up. And I had just called her an hour before to say, I'll be there. So at that point, it was 15 minutes before. I knew you guys were all in the process of getting supper organized. And fortunately, there was a member who had an aide with her, and she said, well, I'll just have my aide call an Uber for me. She was very understanding. But I kind of wonder how often those last minute things come up. And I've often sort of wondered if I even thought, well, maybe, look, I'll call an Uber for you. But I wonder if there was any way that we might be able to set up kind of some sort of a system, maybe even get some financial support for, for emergency use of Lyft or Uber when there's no other option. Or whether, I guess when there must be times that you just can't find a driver, you have to tell the person we can't find anybody, and then they have to call a cab or do something themselves, right?
In limited circumstances, we drive them, the staff.
I know, and that's not fair.
We try not to make that. We try not to make that a habit, right? It's very infrequent, very, very infrequent. But we are also looking, the city has now opened up the connector card, which is a subsidy, and they make a one-way trip in a cab $7. And then you actually get a certain amount of money. I think it's like $60 a month, and you can carry over $30. So that's another thing that we're trying to do, is to get people, now that the city has opened that back up again, to get them in the queue for the waiting list. And in that case, we can, if they're able to, then they can use that service.
Yeah.
And then if they're able to, then they can use that service. we're not a 24-hour service, and I don't want to overpromise, but hopefully you all have my cell phone number. So if anything ever came up, I mean, I'm always here, with a rare exception, even on the weekends and things like that. So Judy, in the case, you know, God forbid if that ever happened again, you know, if something comes up and you can't deal with it, you can always call me, and you know, I'm pretty much always on my phone, and can take over so that the person isn't waiting. Robbie?
Actually, I was going to ask the question. It reminded me, I've had it happen to me 2 or 3 times on the weekend that I went to pick someone up. Now, this is over many years, right? And they were not there or did not answer the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly didn't know what to do because it's the weekend and there's no way to reach anyone and say, like, what should I do about this? So I guess we're supposed to call you, or, I mean, I'm knocking on the door and the person isn't there, isn't answering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, definitely please give me a call. That's not going to be our official policy, because we've got to get something better than that.
Right.
But in the interim, while I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, but while and during my tenure, I welcome your call at any time. And we do have the ability in our software to know, you know, we have information about the person and their contacts. And in some cases, I have called people, and in a few cases, I have gone over to check on somebody. And in other cases, I've called their emergency contacts in order to check on them.
Well,
So
I have to say, and at least twice, I think the person had just ridden with someone else, you know, and did not bother to let
Yeah.
anyone know, or maybe in one case got confused about which person they were supposed to be riding with or something.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so there was never a catastrophe.
Right.
Yeah.
And before we're 2 minutes over, I want to take just a few minutes, unless there's a burning issue that somebody has. Any burning issue? Okay.
No.
I'd like to just take a few minutes to hear from you all around how many times, and I'm going to make it per month, do you think it's reasonable for us to ask those volunteers that want to sign up as drivers to drive per month as an expectation?
Well,
2. I see 2.
yeah, well, yeah,
Sure.
2. As I recall, when I did my training, it was before COVID, that I told that, you know, there was no hard and fast rule, but we would hope that you would consider at least once every 2 weeks, you know, kind of thing, assuming you're in town and all. And that seems reasonable. It seemed reasonable to me back then, a long time ago.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
So twice a month.
Yeah.
You know, it's really so interesting. It's so different. I would assume at least twice a month.
Yeah.
I think most people who volunteer probably do more than that, but
Mhm.
I have to say, I do not do it more than that. I probably am somewhere between 1 and 2 times a month, but I have other volunteer activities. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want all my time like signed up, and I'd like to have free time.
I
You
think
know, I think it'd be
think
helpful,
that could
Frank,
be
to
an
have,
out
I
and
didn't know
out.
if there was an expectation. And I think it'd be very helpful to know that it's expected that you could drive maybe twice a month, or, I mean, it's gonna balance out over the times when you have vacation or whatever, but that would be helpful to me to know what the expectation is.
Yeah. And we do want to keep our flexibility, because part of what we say to people is, when you come to the village, great thing is you can sort of pick and choose what works for you. So you know, if people travel often, they can say, oh, I'm going to be in town for these 2 weeks, but not these 2 weeks. And so I'll be busier here and not there. We want to make it work, but I think it is helpful to have, within that flexibility, to have some sort of expectation that people can set against. Any other final thoughts? Anyone disagree with 2 per month?
Frank, I just wanted to say, so, I mean, my schedule is so erratic. I mean, sometimes I'll do, you know, twice a week for a couple weeks and then I'm gone for a couple. And so it's very, yeah, and how much does Dan want to know? I mean, does he want to know every time I go away for a week? I mean, when I'm away, I just don't volunteer. So I just, how much does he want to know about all that? About my
Well,
schedule?
I believe, Claire,
mean-
and correct me if I'm wrong, but can they go in and put themselves on vacation mode?
I think we might have to do
I
it.
think, yeah, I have to do it. But
Okay.
the other thing is, it's like, if I'm sending too many emails, and then you can just send a text and say, hey, I'm out of town, and then I'll just, if I'm sending out one, I'll just take you off that email list when I'm sending it out. I try to keep on that, but because I don't want to bother you.
I just want to second what so many other people have already said is about how incredibly, I mean, I think the job you guys do, and you, Dan, particularly now, and Claire before you, it's got to be one of the hardest jobs there is to do. You do it so efficiently and in such a supportive way, and it makes it easy to volunteer.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
I do too.
Yeah,
no, but I mean, the volunteers are, the people that sign up for this organization are really special. So,
Well,
because
it's
I make a lot of mistakes. So,
I like to tell people it's a gift to us.
Yeah.
They're so thankful to you, but I always say, well, it's a gift to be able to help someone, and that makes them feel really good, and I feel that way. So there you go.
Just a quick question. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm Adrian. I'm sorry I was so late to this meeting. But how many drivers do you have total? You probably said it already at the beginning.
We have 51, and 41 of those have done a ride, at least one, throughout the year. But some of them are brand new and some haven't just done any. And we have about 10 that have done just one ride. And the range goes from 1 to 68.
And do you feel like that's enough, or are you needing more drivers?
So I think we always need new drivers. I have two final points. One is, if you know anybody that's willing to give us, on average 2 per month, that'd be great. It would just relieve the pressure. And we're also, as an organization, I think, trying to ensure that our services are available to those that need it, regardless of the financial situation. So I see us growing, and we're going to need more people. So that would be really helpful if anyone knows anyone. The final thing I wanted to tell you is that we're reviewing our volunteer agreements specifically for drivers. And we may be sending those out in the new year to have you all sign a new agreement, mostly to say, gee, if anything about your driving record changes, can you please let us know?
Good idea.
Because right now we don't have that, and it's rather expensive to go and to redo a driving check. So we're asking in the interim for you all to please let us know if something happens, if you're in an accident, or you get a ticket or something like that, so that we can be aware of that and we can discuss with you whether or not it still works. Beyond that, I just truly want to thank you for your time tonight, but for all that you do for our members of the community. It really is fantastic how we come together and support our neighbors, people that, become very dear to us, because we wouldn't know them otherwise. So thank you all very, very much. And we'll
Thanks, everybody.
we'll have this up available, this link, in case you want to rewatch it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks at
Bye.
all. Bye.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.